August 30th, 1997, Balmoral Castle, Scotland. Diana was leaving in the morning, flying to Paris with Dodie, a brief holiday before returning to London. Before returning to William and Harry. She didn't know she'd never see them again, but the last words Charles said to her that day weren't "be safe" or "have a good trip" or even "goodbye." They were cruel, deliberate, designed to hurt. And Diana died the next day, never knowing if he regretted them. Paul Henderson was Charles's butler at Balmoral. He'd worked for the Prince of Wales for 12 years, had witnessed the marriage deteriorate from dysfunction to hatred, had seen Diana cry more times than he could count. But August 30th, 1997 was different. That day, Paul saw something that still haunts him. He saw the last conversation between Charles and Diana, and he heard what Charles said to her before she left. Diana had spent the week at Balmoral with William and Harry. The boys were 15 and 12, still young enough to need their mother, still innocent enough to believe their parents might reconcile. It had been a tense week. Diana and Charles barely spoke, communicated through staff. The Queen was cold. Philip was hostile. Everyone walked on eggshells. Diana was counting the hours until she could leave, until she could escape the suffocating formality. The judgment, the barely concealed contempt. She'd planned the Paris trip as a brief respite, a few days with Dodie before returning to her real life, before returning to William and Harry and her charity work. She had no idea those few days would be her last. August 30th started with breakfast. Diana sat with William and Harry in the morning room, trying to make the most of their final hours together, trying to pretend everything was normal. "When are you back, Mum?" William asked. "Wednesday," Diana said. 3 days. Then we'll have the rest of the summer." "Can we go to Thorpe Park?" Harry asked hopefully. Diana smiled. "Of course, whatever you want." Charles entered. The temperature in the room dropped. "Boys, your grandmother wants to see you," he said. Not good morning, not a greeting to Diana, just orders. William and Harry exchanged glances. They'd learned to read the tension, to navigate it carefully. "Can we finish breakfast first?" William asked. "Now, please," Charles said firmly. The boys stood, kissed Diana goodbye. "Love you, Mum," Harry whispered. "Love you more," Diana whispered back. She watched them leave, her heart aching. 3 more days. Then she'd have them back. Then everything would be better. Charles remained in the doorway, watching her. "You're leaving this morning?" he said. Not a question. "Yes. My flight is at 11. "Good." The single word hung in the air. Cold. Final. Diana felt the familiar sting of his contempt, but she was done fighting, done trying to earn basic kindness. "I'll be back Wednesday," she said quietly, "to collect the boys." Yes. They'd be better off staying here. Diana's head snapped. Up. "Excuse me?" "They're settled here. Happy. You coming and going disrupts them." "I'm their mother, Charles. I'm not disrupting them by existing." "You're dragging them into your circus," Charles said coldly, "parading them in front of cameras, using them for sympathy. They need stability, structure, things you can't provide." Paul Henderson was passing through the corridor outside, heard the raised voices, paused. He shouldn't eavesdrop. He knew that. But something about Diana's voice, the pain in it, made him stop. "I provide love," Diana said, her voice shaking. "I provide attention and affection and actual parenting, things they don't get here, things you've never given them." "Don't lecture me about parenting," Charles snapped. "You're barely functional yourself. Therapy 3 times a week, pills for anxiety, crying to journalists about how hard your life is. You're a mess, Diana. Everyone knows it." Paul heard Diana's sharp intake of breath, heard the cruelty land exactly as Charles intended. "At least I'm trying," Diana said quietly. "At least I'm fighting to be better. For them. What are you doing except judging me for struggling?" "I'm protecting them from your instability," Charles said. "From your drama, from the chaos you create everywhere you go." "The chaos I create?" Diana's voice rose. "You had an affair throughout our entire marriage. You lied to me, gaslit me, made me think I was crazy for believing what I knew was true. And now you're calling me unstable because I broke under the pressure?" "You broke because you're weak," Charles said. The words were quiet, precise, devastating. Paul felt sick listening to them. Diana was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. I'm leaving now. I'll see the boys Wednesday. Maybe you shouldn't. What? Maybe you should extend your holiday, Charles said. Give the boys some time without your emotional demands. Give everyone a break from your presence. Charles, they're my children. They're my children too, and they're better off without you around. Paul heard footsteps, Diana leaving the room quickly. He pressed against the wall as she passed. Saw her face streaked with tears. Saw her holding herself together by sheer will. She didn't see him, didn't see anyone. Just walked straight to her room. To pack. To leave. Charles emerged from the morning room, saw Paul standing there, knew he'd been overheard. Not a word, Charles said coldly. To anyone. Yes, sir, Paul whispered, but he'd already heard too much. Already witnessed something that felt wrong, cruel, unforgivable. Diana left Balmoral at 10:30 a.m., but first she had to pull herself together, had to stop crying, stop shaking, had to become the mother her children needed to see, not the broken woman Charles had just destroyed. She went to her room, locked the door, sat on the edge of the bed and let herself fall apart. Just for 5 minutes, just long enough to release the pain. Charles's words echoed in her head. You're weak. You're a mess. They're better off without you. Was he right? Was she damaging them? Would William and Harry truly be happier without her chaos? She looked at herself in the mirror. Red eyes, blotchy face, trembling hands. This is what he sees, she thought, this broken version of me. Maybe he's right. Maybe they would be better off. No, she wouldn't let him do this to her. Wouldn't let him make her doubt the one thing she knew was true. Her children loved her, needed her, wanted her. Whatever Charles said, that remained real? She washed her face, fixed her makeup, put on the smile she'd learned to wear, the one that hid everything. Then she went to William and Harry's rooms to say goodbye one more time. William hugged her tight. Are you okay, Mum? He always knew, always saw through her performance. Diana forced a smile. Of course, darling, I'm fine. You look sad. Just tired. I'll feel better after some sunshine. But William kept looking at her, studying her face. Did Dad say something? You've been crying. Diana's heart broke. He was 15. Too young for this. Too young to worry about his parents' dysfunction. Your father and I just had a disagreement, she said carefully. It's nothing for you to worry about. He makes you cry a lot, William said quietly. It wasn't a question. It was an observation. A truth her teenage son had absorbed through years of watching. Sometimes people hurt each other, Diana said, even when they don't mean to. He means to, William said. The bluntness of it stunned her. William? I'm not stupid, Mum. I see how he talks to you, how he treats you, like you don't matter, like you're just in the way. Diana pulled him close. Listen to me. Whatever happens between your father and me, it has nothing to do with you and Harry. You two are the best thing I ever did. The only thing I got completely right. Don't ever doubt that. Then why are you leaving? William asked. Why are you going to Paris when you could stay with us? Because your father told me you're better off without me, she thought. Because I'm trying to give you space, to be less, to want less, to stop being the problem he says I am. But she couldn't say that, couldn't burden him with it. I'm only going for 3 days, she said instead. Then I'm coming right back, and we'll have the rest of the summer, just us 3, I promise. Harry clung to her. 3 days? 3 days, Diana promised, then Thorpe Park. She held them both, memorizing the feeling, their warmth, their love, their absolute trust that she'd always come back, and somewhere in the back of her mind a small voice whispered, what if Charles is right? What if they're better off? She pushed it away, refused to let his poison take root. But the doubt remained, planted, growing. She had no way of knowing this was goodbye, that these were her last moments with her children, that Charles's cruel words would be the last thing anyone from the family said to her. Paul watched her car leave, watched her drive away from Balmoral, away from her children, away from safety, toward Paris, toward Dodie, toward death. He thought about telling someone what he'd heard, about reporting Charles's cruelty, but who would believe him? Who would care? Charles was heir to the throne. Diana was divorced, damaged. The institution would protect Charles, always had, always would. So Paul kept quiet and hated himself for it. 24 hours later, Paul was woken by frantic knocking. 3 a.m., August 31st, another staff member, white-faced, shaking. "It's Diana. There's been an accident in Paris." Paul felt his stomach drop. "Is she?" "They don't know yet. It's bad." By 4 a.m., they knew. Diana was dead. Paul immediately thought of the boys, upstairs, sleeping, about to wake to the worst day of their lives. And he thought of Charles, who would have to tell them their mother was gone, whose last words to her had been, "They're better off without you." Paul watched Charles that morning, watched him wake William and Harry, watched him break their hearts with 6 words. "I'm afraid Mummy's been in an accident." William knew immediately. "Is she dead?" The question hung in the air. Charles nodded, unable to speak. Both boys collapsed, sobbing. And Charles held them. Actually held them. Paul had never seen Charles embrace his children before, never seen him show physical affection, but in that moment Charles clung to William and Harry, like he was drowning, like they were all drowning. And Paul wondered if Charles was thinking about his last conversation with Diana, about his cruelty, about his final words, about the fact that she died believing he wanted her gone. The next days were chaos, funeral planning, media management, public grief. Charles flew to Paris to bring Diana's body home, walked behind her coffin through London streets, stood at her funeral looking devastated. But Paul remembered August 30th, remembered what Charles had said when no one was watching. "They're better off without you." And Paul wondered, did Charles regret it? Did he lie awake thinking about those words? Did he wish he could take them back? Or did some part of him still believe them? Years later, long after Paul had left royal service, he gave an interview to a small documentary team. Not BBC, not mainstream media. People outside the system. He told them about August 30th, 1997, about the conversation he'd overheard, about Charles's cruelty to Diana hours before she died. He told her the boys were better off without her, Paul said. Told her she was unstable, weak, a mess. Told her to extend her holiday, to stay away longer. And she left believing he meant it, left believing her own husband, the father of her children, thought they were better off without their mother. And then she died, and never got to hear him say he was wrong. The interviewer asked if Paul thought Charles regretted it. Paul considered carefully. "I don't know. I've thought about it for decades. Watched Charles with William and Harry over the years. He became a better father after she died. More present, more affectionate, more involved. Maybe guilt made him change. Maybe losing her made him realize what he'd destroyed. Or maybe he just learned to play the part better. I'll never know. No one will. But I know this. Diana died believing she was unwanted, believing even her own children were better off without her. That's what Charles's words did to her, and whether he regrets them or not, he has to live with knowing those were his last words to her." The documentary aired quietly in 2015. Few people watched it. Few people cared. The Diana story felt exhausted, overanalyzed, done. But William saw it. Someone sent him a link, suggested he watch. He did. Alone, late at night, and he heard Paul Henderson describe that morning, heard what his father said to his mother, hours before she died. William called Harry immediately. "Did you know about this? About what Dad said?" Harry hadn't seen it. William played it for him. They listened in silence, heard their mother's pain in Paul's description, heard their father's cruelty, remembered that last morning at Balmoral. How Mum had seemed sad, how Dad had seemed cold, how they'd had no idea it was the last time. "He told her we were better off without her," Harry said quietly. "And then she died, thinking that was true." William didn't respond. Couldn't. The guilt was crushing. Not guilt for anything they'd done, but guilt that their mother died believing her own children would be better off without her, that Charles had poisoned her last day with that lie, and she carried it with her to Paris, carried it with her into that tunnel, died believing it. "We have to confront him," Harry said. William shook his head. "What's the point? He'll deny it, or justify it, or blame her. He always does. So we just let it go?" "We remember it," William said quietly. "We remember that Mum died, thinking she wasn't wanted, and we make sure our own children never doubt that they're loved, wanted, needed. That's how we honor her, not by fighting Dad about words he said 2 decades ago, but by being better than he was. Harry wasn't satisfied, but he understood. Some conversations couldn't be had. Some confrontations wouldn't bring closure. Some truths just had to be carried. Paul Henderson died in 2019. He was 73. Complications from pneumonia. His obituary mentioned his years in royal service. Didn't mention the documentary, didn't mention what he'd revealed. But a few people remembered. A few people knew what he'd witnessed, and they understood the weight he'd carried. The burden of knowing something terrible about powerful people, and choosing to speak anyway, even though it cost him, even though few people listened, because some truths matter more than consequences. Some secrets are too important to keep. The last words Charles said to Diana weren't loving, weren't kind, weren't even civil. They were designed to hurt, to diminish, to wound, and they succeeded. Diana left Balmoral that morning feeling unwanted, feeling like even her own children were better off without her, feeling like the man she'd once loved wished she would just disappear. 24 hours later, she did, and Charles never got to take those words back, never got to tell her he was wrong, never got to apologize for decades of cruelty. He has to live with that, with knowing his last words to his children's mother were words of rejection and contempt, with knowing she died carrying that pain. William and Harry have to live with it too, with knowing their father hurt their mother hours before she died, with wondering if those words contributed to what happened, if Diana was distracted in Paris, sad, vulnerable, if Charles's cruelty played any role in the choices she made that night. They'll never know. No one will. But they know this. Diana deserved better, deserved kindness, deserved respect, deserved to leave on good terms with the father of her children, and Charles denied her that. In her final hours with her family, he chose cruelty over compassion, chose to wound rather than release, chose to make sure she left in pain. And that choice, those words, became his final gift to her. Not goodbye, not be safe, not even silence, but cruelty. The last thing Diana heard from Charles before she died was that her children were better off without her, and she died believing it was true.